That's my answer to everything now, is just shut the hell up. You're so dumb. If you go around saying we shouldn't legislate morality, you are too dumb to participate in any of these conversations. You are so stupid that you don't belong in the conversation. You really don't. If I could, I wish that we could take anyone who still uses the phrase legislate morality and banish them to a small volcanic island somewhere in the Pacific.
Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Patriot Podcast, brought to you by Future of Christendom. My name is Chris Hume. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. For more information about Future of Christendom, head over to futureofchristendom.org. There you will find all our podcasts, articles, information about our upcoming events. And if you are not signed up for our email newsletter, you can find the link right on our homepage, or you can scroll down to the bottom on the footer and enter your email address. That way you'll get updated on our latest events, conferences, debates, new book releases, new podcasts, new articles, and more. So I encourage you to go to Future of Christendom and get signed up for the updates. Follow us on YouTube. We have a Future of Christendom YouTube channel. I also have a specific YouTube channel for the Lancaster Patriot Podcast. So check those out as well. And as always, if you find the content helpful, please share it with others. On this episode, I want to dig deeper into that clip from Matt Walsh. I have more to play that segment with Matt Walsh. And I think we'll see that Matt Walsh is getting dangerously close to Lancastrian theonomy. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to spend a moment talking about the federal crackdown on anti-Semitism. And this is from the LancasterPatriot.com, and the title is Defining Dissent, How the Federal Crackdown on Anti-Semitism Redefines the Boundaries of Speech. Now, I won't read the whole thing, but I want to skip to the third paragraph here. Before that, it talks about a 15-city national awareness and action tour that the Department of Justice is putting on to combat anti-Semitism. And I want to read the third paragraph here. It says, at the core of this sweeping nationwide push is a highly controversial legal mechanism. The codification of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, so remember that, the IHRA, their working definition of anti-Semitism into federal civil rights investigations. So the federal government is saying we're taking the IHRA's working definition of anti-Semitism, and we're going to work that into our federal civil rights investigations. By linking this specific definition to Title 6, I should say, Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act, federal agencies are increasingly treating political criticism of the State of Israel as potential instances of unlawful discrimination. Okay, so the IHRA's definition is now officially, I think we can say, being used by the federal government for civil rights violations. If we go down here in this article, there's a section entitled The Litmus Test, What Now Counts as a Civil Rights Violation? And I just want to read just portions of this because I think it's very important. Because the IHRA framework is now the operational standard for federal civil rights compliance, public scrutiny has shifted heavily toward the specific contemporary examples of anti-Semitism outlined in the text. Under this framework, actions and statements that historically fell under protected political speech, theological debate, or historical revisionism are now systematically flagged for federal review. The specific criteria include, and so the article goes on and lists 5 criteria, and there's many more if you go to the IHRA definition, but these are just 5 that are included in this article on the LancasterPatriot.com. I'm not going to read all of them, but I would like to highlight a few. The first one is the Nazi comparison ban. And just listen to this and think about how ridiculous this is. Again, this is from Lancaster Patriot. The IHRA framework explicitly classifies drawing comparisons, listen to this, quote, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, end quote, as an act of anti-Semitism. So this definition, which the federal government has adopted, is saying it is anti-Semitic. And my wife says I say that wrong, so I might be saying anti-Semitic wrong, but I just can't bring myself to say it any other way. That's the way it comes out. It might be anti-Semitic. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So they're saying that if you draw comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to the Nazis, it's anti-Semitic. Think about what that means for a second. So we can compare any other nation's policies on earth to Stalin or Pol Pot or Hitler, if we look at what's happening and say objectively, here's what's going on, and you know what? That's also what the Nazis did, or that's also what Stalin did. That's also what Pol Pot did. That's what Mao Zedong did. We can do that with any other nation, but now according to the federal government, you can't do that with Israel. And I want to read the impact here, what's written in this Lancaster Patriot article. The impact. In practice, this guideline establishes a unique legal standard for the state of Israel. While political commentators, historians, and activists routinely draw analogies between various global governments and 20th century authoritarian regimes, such as comparing U.S., Russian, or Chinese policies to the Nazi or fascist systems, doing so specifically in reference to Israeli military or domestic policy can now trigger a federal civil rights investigation, risking a university's federal funding. So that's just one implication of a university, but this can be used in many different contexts. And when the government embraces the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism, we have a serious problem. We've basically created a protected class, a protected nation that Israel can do whatever they want, and we can never compare them to Nazi Germany. That's insane. That doesn't make any sense. The only reason it makes sense is if there's special interests here, and there's an Israeli lobby, and there's a desire to shield Israel and protect them from any scrutiny so that they can basically do whatever they want. This is what leads to serious world conflict. This sort of setting up people as a protected class and giving rights to them that others don't have. It's one of the things James Jordan actually talks about when he talks about how the Jews are really a fake people. And I'm going to talk more about that at our upcoming event. Our upcoming event in June. And you can find more information about that event at futureofchristendom.org. But when you set up this idea that these people are special and they have special rights and there's a special way you have to treat them, right or wrong, you are going to engender opposition to them. You're going to stir up opposition to them because that's not just. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not just that there'd be a standard for Israel and not for other nations. If Mexico starts behaving in a way that is reminiscent of Nazi Germany or communist Soviet Union, we're certainly within our rights to compare them to that. But this is basically saying Israel can do no wrong. They could never, ever. It's beyond comprehension that Israel could ever do something as evil as Nazi Germany. And that is a foolish, foolish thing to do. If you know anything about human nature and history, you know there's nothing keeping Israel from committing atrocities that other people have. So that's one of the first, and if not the most ridiculous thing in this IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism. But there's so many more. How about this one? This is number 3 on the Lancaster Patriot article. Placing historical atrocities outside normal inquiry, the framework flags, and here's the quote from the IHRA definition, accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. So if the Jews as a people or Israel as a state, if you say they're even just exaggerating the Holocaust, now you are going to be liable for violating this anti-Semitic law or whatever, which again is absurd. That's basically saying no matter what the Jews or Israel, whoever these Jews are, which again, I have some episodes on that from last year. I'm going to have a whole talk on that at our upcoming event in Friedensburg. But these people that want to call themselves Jews and want to make some claim that there's some sort of special people, this is basically saying no matter what they say about the Holocaust, you can never suggest that they're exaggerating. So they could come out and say 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, 20 million, 25 million Jews died. Whatever number they say, you can never question it. And again, this is another insane part of this entire we are going down a path here that can only spell trouble for the world and also specifically for the people that still want to call themselves Jews. This is not actually going to help them when you are setting them up as this special people that no one can touch. That's not going to go well on the world stage. I'll tell you that right now. And there's several more here. I don't want to even get into them all. But here's one. I'll just read this for the last one. The IHRA definition includes, quote, using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, for example, claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood libel, to characterize Israel or Israelis. Now, there's a lot of ways that could be used and abused. If you're simply reading through the New Testament, Jesus, the Jews and the Jewish leaders of the day were the ones pushing for Jesus' execution. The Romans did it, but it was the Jewish leaders that were calling for the execution of Jesus, and it was the Jewish leaders who were able to influence the crowds as well to call for the execution of Jesus. So it's almost like if you even say that, you're now anti-Semitic. So this is, quite frankly, insanity. And it's another example of a system of government that is man's system and not God's. And God's system, you can't have this. You can't have a bill about anti-Semitism because you can't have any bills. You can't have any laws because God has given them to us. And this is one thing that Luke has argued over and over again, that once you create the legislature, once you create the legislative branch, there's no end to the laws that will be made. And this is another example of it. This is another example that, now this is not a law in this article, but it does mention that says here, Senators Jackie Rosen and James Lankford introduced the Bipartisan Jewish American Security Act. So that just happened. I don't even think we have the text of the bill yet. It's a comprehensive bill that seeks to mandate strict Title VI frameworks on college campuses, boost nonprofit security funding to $1 billion, and force social media platforms to disclose their moderation algorithms. So there's going to be a law. There's probably already some laws. There's executive orders. There's laws. There's going to be more the enshrinement of this ridiculous idea that the Jews are some sort of protected class, and it's only going to cause problems. So go to thelancasterpatriot.com. Right now, it's the latest article on the front page, or you can go to National News and read this article, Defining Dissent, How the Federal Crackdown on Anti-Semitism Redefines the Boundaries of Speech. You might be shocked. If you have been unaware of this, you might be shocked to find just what our federal government is doing as it relates to the Jews and Israel. And it should be very, very concerning to anyone that cares about justice, cares about our nation, cares about even world peace. I don't think anybody wants there to be more conflicts and wars. And I'll just note this, and then I'll leave the rest to my talk next month. The Jews would be better off if all the people that claim they are Jews renounce that title, because it means nothing now. The title Jew and the people of the Jewish people are no longer a relevant people. With the resurrection, ascension of Christ, and the formation of the New Testament church, there is no covenant people. There is no relationship based on your ethnicity or your claimed ethnicity, because I think the Arabic Christians, the Palestinian Christians, have more genetic ties to Abraham than these Ashkenazi or people who are claiming the name Jews. But I'll talk much more about that later. So go to LancasterPatriot.com and get some more, or read this article and share it. And maybe some people that don't know what's going on with the federal government and how they have a love affair with Jews and are basically trying to create an entirely separate class that has a different standard of justice, which flies in the face of biblical law. There shall be one law for the native and the sojourner. And what our federal government excels at is creating a bunch of different classes and giving them special privileges. So not going to go well. Pray that our nation would repent of this nonsense. But it's the system we have, right? It's the system that we have embraced. And when we've rejected God's system, we are going to get the bad fruit. As I mentioned on the last episode, a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. The bad tree of the man-made U.S. governmental system can only bear this type of fruit. And until that system changes, until the tree changes, don't expect any other fruit. But the tree can change by the grace of God. It will take a massive reformation, but it can happen. So let's move on from that for now, and let's go to this clip by Matt Walsh. Now, this clip is I played a brief segment of it in the beginning here, but I want to play the full thing, and it's a longer clip. But this is the only clip I'm playing, and I'm going to wrap up with this today. So I want you to hear the full context of what Matt Walsh is saying. And I'm not going to argue that Matt Walsh is a theonomist. I don't think he's a theonomist at all. I think he embraces the American system. I think he maybe doesn't know better. But I think there are times when Matt Walsh just has some very maybe uncommon common sense. And when he's speaking in that way, he accidentally affirms many of the things that are inherent or foundational to biblical justice. And that would make sense because we are all created in God's image. Matt Walsh is created in God's image. When he speaks here, when he talks about justice, there's an element that he gets right. And I believe God has created man and he's created the systems for us. So God knows us better than anyone. He's given us the systems that will allow us to flourish in the home. He's given us the system, the structure, the form of a father and a mother, a husband and a wife and children. It didn't have to be that way. God could have created a different form. It could have been like some, I don't know, fish where you lay a bunch of eggs and then the animals, the offspring, I should say, develops on their own. Or he could have made it that in a home, it's just one person. You're asexual and there's no father and mother. But he gave us a form in the home, and it's for our good. And you see that. You can see even unbelievers or people that don't believe in the Bible reference that form and get things right. In the church, he's given us a form. In the civil government, he's given us a form. That's his law, is the statutes, and then the form is the adjudication by local judges. And that is the form that is most conducive for our flourishing and for the function of justice. So listen to this clip from Matt Walsh, and then we'll dissect it briefly.
I'm so tired of this. And this is another one you hear from people on the right. Oh, we shouldn't legislate more. Again, shut up. That's my answer to everything now, is just shut the hell up. You're so dumb. If you go around saying we shouldn't legislate morality, you are too dumb to participate in any of these conversations. You are so stupid that you don't belong in the conversation. You really don't. If I could, I wish that we could take anyone who still uses the phrase legislate morality and banish them to a small volcanic island somewhere in the Pacific, okay, and let the volcano do what it's going to do. I'm not saying we should throw them into the volcano. I'm not saying we should kill them. I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying put them on the island and let nature take its course. That may sound like overkill. I understand, but I just can't take it anymore. I can't. Even now, you still have these people running around saying we don't want to legislate morality. We hear from Republican politicians. At least them. Can we start with them? Exile the Republican politicians who still use the phrase legislate morality unironically. Okay. Yeah, yes, Governor. Yeah, the bill legislates morality. Do you know what else legislates morality? Literally every law that's ever been passed anywhere on earth at any time. All of them legislate morality. That's what a law is, you ignoramus. That's what a law does. That's the point of a law. Why do you think we have laws? Do you think laws are supposed to be morally neutral? Like we make a law, we don't even care whether it's, when we prohibit something, it's whether the thing is good or bad. We don't even know. We don't care. We're just randomly passing laws without any sense of what's right or wrong. Is that what you want? You utter dumbass. Is that what you think we should do? Every law ever passed anywhere legislates morality. Every law is grounded in some kind of moral code. That's what a law is. That's the point. Now, a law can be wrong. So please don't come back and say, well, yeah, but sometimes people make things illegal when they shouldn't be. Yeah, obviously. Yes, every law legislates morality. It can legislate it wrongly. A law can be grounded in the wrong moral code. A law can be bad. It can be wrong. Okay. It can legislate morality wrongly or counterproductively. But every law, the good ones and the bad ones, legislate morality. The alternative is an amoral law. Okay, a law that is passed without any concept of right or wrong. Just a random, arbitrary law, a law that prohibits or allows something regardless of whether that thing is seen as good or bad. That's the alternative. That's what not legislating morality would entail. And that would be insane. Okay, so take anything that's currently illegal that you think should be illegal. Because I assume if you go around screaming about, we don't want to legislate morality, I assume you agree that we should legislate some things. There should be some laws. I assume you would agree. So just take any law. Let's take an easy one. Everybody thinks that murder should be illegal. At least everyone thinks that, after birth it should be illegal. So let's take the case of like murdering some random 35-year-old person. Everyone thinks that should be illegal. And it is, at least in theory, in every country on earth. Okay, why? Why is it illegal? There's a riddle for you, Governor. Why is it illegal? Well, you say, well, it's got nothing to do with morality. It's because you're hurting someone. Okay, genius. Why shouldn't we hurt people? Hurting people, who cares about that? Why should I care about that? Who cares? Yeah, it hurts someone. What does that matter? Why shouldn't I hurt people? Why shouldn't I? Oh, because hurting people is evil. That's it. I mean, that's the answer. Like that, if it wasn't evil, it shouldn't be illegal. Now, that doesn't mean that every evil thing should necessarily be illegal. It does mean that everything that's illegal should be evil. Okay, so I would say this again for our friend, the governor of North Dakota. Not every evil thing should necessarily be illegal, but everything that is illegal should be evil. There shouldn't be anything that's good and is illegal. In fact, if something is wrongly made illegal and people are objecting to it, the whole reason they're objecting to it is because they're saying, well, no, that's good though. You can't make that illegal. It's a good thing. Okay. Going 30 miles over the speed limit is illegal. Most people think it should be. Okay, going 55 and a 25 in a residential neighborhood, in a school zone. Okay, that's most people think. Why is it illegal? Oh, because you might hurt someone. Again, why does that matter? Because it's wrong, because it's evil, because it's wrong to harm people that way. So any law, it only takes about one or two moves before you're back here, before you're back at morality, before you're back at a moral code. Because that's what all laws are based on. And you can't get around it by saying, no, it's not based on laws. It's about protecting rights. Okay, why does it matter who cares about rights? It's got nothing to do with morality. We got to protect people's liberty, their rights, their human rights. Who cares about liberty? Who cares about human rights? Why does that matter? Why shouldn't we take away somebody's rights? Oh, because it's wrong to do that. Because it's evil. Because that's one of the evil things that we've decided should be illegal.
All right, so in that clip, Matt Walsh makes a couple good points, and it's regarding those 2 or 3 good points that I think he comes dangerously close to theonomy. But he's also way off base on some other points, because I think the problem with Matt Walsh, as with so many others, is that he has some common sense and reason, but he's still operating within man's system of government. And so he just can't fathom, and he can't take the logical conclusions of some of the things he's saying to their natural end, because it would seem blasphemous, because it would go against the American system that we have. He wants us to create more and more laws. He's just saying, here's how we need to create laws. So he starts off by saying that those who would say we can't legislate morality are stupid because all laws are about morality. And in that sense, he's right, because a law, if there's force behind it, there's a moral component. Now, the problem is that it's not just that some of our laws are amoral, which is what he says the alternative would be. The thing is, most of our laws are actually amoral in the sense that there is nothing evil about the action that is being punished. And that's a problem. There's no morality even tied to it. Like, what's the immoral aspect of me driving down the road without a driver's license? There's nothing immoral about it. The only way that someone could even make the claim that it's immoral is if they simply say, if you don't follow any law, now you're being immoral. So if you break any law, you're immoral. But that doesn't follow logically, because Matt Walsh's point, and he's right, is that there has to be something inherent in the behavior that is evil. It can't simply be the fact that you didn't follow the law that makes it evil. That is an amoral approach to the law. The irony is that's what we have. Most of our laws, Mr. Walsh, are like that. There's no morality tied to them objectively. Now, it becomes a moral issue because now you're punishing people who haven't committed evil. which takes us to the thing that Matt Walsh says that is true, is that only evil things should be punished. Okay, and there's 4 points here I want to make from this talk. I'm actually going to put them all up on the screen right now. Number 1, only evil things should be punished by the civil magistrate. Number 2, not all evil things are punishable by the civil magistrate. Number 3, God's law gives us all the laws we need to determine what evils should be punished by the civil magistrate. And number 4, the system by which evil is punished is just as important as what is punished. The Bible requires adjudication after the fact, not preemptive regulation. So those 4 points are the key takeaways from this analysis of this clip from Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is correct that only evil things should be punished. The magistrate is not authorized to punish things that are not evil. That's a fairly simple claim, but ironically, I don't know, there's the majority of Christians and Christian pastors would not even agree with that. They would say there are many things, and actually even in this clip, Matt Walsh, I think, is inconsistent and contradicts himself at the end when he talks about speed limits. But he's right as far as this statement goes. Only evil things should be punished. Now, the standard by which we determine what is evil must be God's law. There has to be some standard. If the standard of what is evil is the laws themselves, and Matt Walsh even hints at this, that doesn't make any sense, because he's saying, of course, there can be laws that are bad. So he's positing a standard outside of the law itself. And that's correct. So if we start there and say only evil things should be punished, and the man-made laws, which we reject all man-made laws, but even in this system, the man-made laws themselves can't be the standard of what is evil. So you can't just say, oh, you were driving down the road without a driver's license. That's evil because there's a law saying you have to have a driver's license. That is illogical. The question is there the standard that the law is there a standard above the law that says, yes, driving without a driver's license is illegal? Now, we shouldn't have a law for that, but we could just place that in the biblical system and say, let's say you're driving down the road without a driver's license. I see you doing that. I know you don't have a driver's license. I take you and bring you before a judge and say, Judge, this man was driving down the road without a driver's license. Now, what is the judge going to do? He's going to say, well, there's no biblical law about driving without a driver's license. There's no harm that has been done here. There's been no violation of the legislation that God has given us. There's not even a case here. So the standard by which we judge the laws can't be the laws themselves in the man-made system. And this is why you see Matt Walsh here wrestling within the man-made system, and it's never going to work. He sees the inconsistencies of it, and he's trying to improve it, but it's just going to continue to produce more and more laws. But the logic is sound in his initial claims there that only evil things should be punished. And the standard by which we determine whether something is evil cannot be man-made law. Even Matt Walsh agrees with that. So, but he goes on there and he makes another great point, again, that many Christians seem to miss, that not all evils are punishable in the civil realm. He affirms that. He says only the only things that are illegal, everything that's illegal should be evil, but not all evil things should be illegal. Okay? That is a true statement. And again, this is another sort of baseline element of justice that we need to understand. And there's a proverb on this that is extremely pertinent. Proverbs 17:26, to impose a fine on a righteous man is not good, nor to strike the noble for their uprightness. So if we take these 2 points, right, only evil things should be punished by the civil magistrate. Not all evil things are punishable by the civil magistrate. It's never right to punish a righteous person, someone who's living righteously, who is taking dominion, and they are now being punished because they violated some code in the process of obeying God. It's never right to punish them. And that's the beauty of there's many beauties. One of the beauties of God's system is that if you know his law, which compared to man-made law is far more concise, a child can understand it. If you are loving God and loving neighbor, then you can do no wrong. When you violate God's law, when you violate your neighbor, then you are liable for restitution and punishment. But if you are loving God and doing what he's called you to do, you don't need to know the thousands and hundreds of thousands of man-made laws, because you will not be committing evil. And it's only when you commit evil that you should even be concerned at all with a civil/criminal penalty, only when you're committing evil. But Matt Walsh correctly takes it one step further, I should say. Even if you are committing an evil act, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be liable before a civil or criminal court. So that's even further. I could be doing something evil. I could be coveting. I could be envious. I could be jealous. But that doesn't mean I'm liable to a civil or criminal penalty in the courts of men. But I can know this for certain. If I'm not committing evil according to God's law, the civil magistrate should not be a terror to me at all. The problem is it's the opposite in the man-made system. The magistrate is a terror to the righteous as he is fulfilling his God-given and his God-required task of taking dominion. But those 2 points, Matt Walsh is spot on. But then he gets off the rails here, and in addition to his, I would say, maybe ignorance of the fact that most all of our laws are not moral in the sense that he's calling them to be. Maybe they are because he does this weird thing with the speed limit, always the speed limits, right? He goes and says, well, yeah, we need a speed limit because it's evil to harm people. Well, first of all, that's sloppy at best. It's not evil to harm people. If I'm defending myself against an intruder and I harm that person, that wasn't evil. So just to say it's evil to harm, now I get what he's saying. It's evil to be, it's wrong, and it's evil to be reckless and endanger people. But that is different than saying it's evil to go 25 miles per hour over the speed limit. If I'm being reckless and harm someone, now again, this makes sense in the biblical system. Again, that's why the paradigm of God's system versus man's system is so important. This can only make sense in God's system. And that's why when we try to explain theonomy to people, they can't decipher it or interpret it if they continue to stay with the paradigm of man's legislative governmental system. It just doesn't make sense. In God's system, there is no speed limit law saying if you go 25 miles per hour over this, you are now liable to punishment. In the biblical system, it's recklessness that leads to harm. Now you are going to be held liable by a judge, by your peers, by the accuser himself, who's going to be the one bringing the charge for your recklessness and what came as a result of your recklessness. The idea of punishing people preemptively is a humanistic idea. It's not biblical. And that's an important point. And that's the fourth point here, is that the system by which evil is punished is just as important as what is punished. We need a system of adjudication. Even when something is truly evil, the Bible does not authorize the magistrate to regulate it preemptively. God's system is a reactive justice. It's case-by-case adjudication when a victim brings a charge or a next of kin of a victim. It's not proactive regulation. It's not libertarianism, but it's a different paradigm than what we're used to here in America and in the West and perhaps in all the world. Man's system is endless preemptive rules, licensing, surveillance, and control. And even in Matt Walsh's system, which as close as he gets, he ends up reverting back to the reason we have all these laws in the first place. Why do we have so many regulatory laws? The steps he makes, he's like, oh, it's just a couple steps from evil. That was a canyon-wide leap to say, since if you drive recklessly, you can harm someone, therefore we'll punish you if you go over the speed limit. You can apply that to anything. You can say, well, since it would be wrong if you didn't pass a test to drive, and therefore if you don't know how to drive, you could harm people. Therefore, you need a driver's license that the state's going to regulate, and if you don't have a driver's license, you are committing evil. Or if you want to sell cookies to your neighbor, you need a cottage license, because if you don't have the cottage license and you poison your neighbor, that would be evil. Therefore, you need a cottage license. If you don't pay the state for the right to sell cookies to your neighbor, you're evil. You see how Matt Walsh's logic leads to the nanny, tyrannical statist system we have now? And I don't think he even realizes it. God's system punishes real evil when it actually occurs with proper witnesses and due process. That is biblical justice. So biblical justice is adjudication after the fact. Now, I want to give you some examples here because it is very important to understand that You should never fear the magistrate if you're not committing evil. That point from Matt Walsh is correct, and that's the point that he's not consistent with down the road. It's 5 minutes later in his own clip. If you're righteously living your life and you're on a road and you're going 10 miles over the speed limit and you are operating safely, you should not fear that you'll be pulled over and your earnings will be stolen from you. But yet we do and Matt Walsh supports it because he's not consistent. Right? He's not consistent in his argumentation. But let's look at these. These are 4 things that are not evil, and therefore there should be no punishment preemptively or after the fact for these. Okay? Let's we already mentioned some of these. Number 1, driving down the road without government papers. Is it evil according to God's law? It's not evil. Therefore, there should be no punishment related to it. Number 2, not paying every level of government exactly what they demand. Is that evil? No, it's not evil. And I would encourage you to read my chapter on taxation and 7 status sins, where I'll make the case that biblical taxation is always voluntary, i.e., there is no civil penalty for not paying it. Now, the question that Jesus was asked was, is it lawful to pay the taxes to Caesar? He was not asked, is it okay if we don't pay them? And I don't think that's just a coincidence. Those are 2 very different questions. And the idea of government taxation being required of you essentially with a gun to your head is a humanistic idea, not a biblical one. So people should not be punished for not paying their taxes. Now, I've talked a lot about this before. Again, I have a whole chapter on it. I'll probably address it again in the future with this idea of authority and what it means to be an authority as a civil magistrate and also as a pastor. And you'll find that those with true authority are able to get the people to follow and support them in their tasks. But there's nothing evil about not paying. The government says, here's your business. Your business made $1 million, and after paying all your employees and allowing them to support their families, you owe us $85,000, and you end up only paying them $80,000. Have you committed evil? No, I would say you haven't committed evil even if you didn't pay them a dime, because 1, they're not even establishing justice, but what you pay in your tithe and in your tax in terms of punishment is between you and the Lord, not between you and the pastor in the church or the magistrate in the state. Number 3, something that is not evil and therefore should not be punished by the state, selling a substance or product. There's nothing wrong with any substance on this earth. And there are probably uses of substances that we might right now think are only evil that could be used for good. It reminds me of the quote from Top Gun Maverick, right? It's not the plane, it's the pilot.
It's not the plane, sir. It's the pilot.
Well, in the same way, it's not the substance, it's the user, okay? If a user is righteous and godly and taking dominion, the magistrate has no business telling him what to do with a substance. Now, if he uses a substance or no substance, if he uses his own hands to strangle his neighbor, or if he uses a substance to poison his neighbor, then there can be a charge brought against him. But it cannot be for selling or possessing a substance or product. This is what leads us, again, and Matt Walsh, maybe emotionally he'd like to support someone like Amos Miller, but logically he can't. Because he's going to say, well, it's evil for people to get sick and die or to sell products that make people get sick and die. Therefore, we have to punish people who are selling raw milk without a license. Maybe he wouldn't say that, but logically, that's where his position goes. Whereas biblically, no, there is no preemptive regulation against someone for selling a product. And there's also, the whole buyer awareness thing. I mean, if you're buying milk or product from anyone, you have a certain level of obligation, but that's another story. I've covered that at length. The point here is selling a substance or a product is not evil. Possessing a substance or a product is not evil. So there should be no punishment for the selling of substances or the possessing of them. There can be a case brought against you if you use a tool to harm someone, but again, it's not the tool, it's the wielder. It's not the substance, it's the user. It's not the plane, it's the pilot, okay? That's what matters. And number 4, another thing that is not evil and therefore should not be punished is leaving one nation and entering another. Is there anything evil about fleeing your nation? Well, many tyrants say yes and want to keep people in, but there is nothing biblically, objectively, or even logically evil about leaving one nation. Is there anything evil about entering another nation? biblically, logically, no, there's nothing evil about entering another nation. So emigration and immigration, neither of those things are evil, and therefore there should be no regulation or punishment for someone who emigrates or immigrates. It's very simple, very logical, and very biblical. But when it comes to these things, many people lose their minds because they think we have to control these things, and they don't understand that the real problem is that we are not establishing justice here in America. And so actually, I want to show a meme here that was shared on Future of Christendom. But that wraps up the Matt Walsh piece here. He almost got there. He was close, but he stopped short of the full biblical position because he was still too committed to the American status system. And we have to stop letting the state define crime and using shoddy logic to take multiple steps to say, well, since evil could come from this, therefore we're going to punish you ahead of time. That is not justice. Only God defines sin. Only God defines crime. The magistrate's job is narrow. It's to be an agent of adjudication after the evil occurs and not before. So those are my thoughts on the Matt Walsh clip. Actually, real quick, just because I brought up immigration there, I want to bring up this meme from Future of Christendom, if I can find it here. And on this, let me see here. Okay, here it is. So this is on Future of Christendom's Facebook page. It's also on Future of Christendom's Twitter or X page. I'm going to put it up on screen. And it has an image of a building, like an industrial factory, and the title is The Secular State Factory. And then on the building it says, the government school system, we produce statists, idolaters, and freeloaders. And there's a conveyor belt with hundreds, and it's supposed to be thousands and millions of people being churned out by the government school system and the American status system, and they're all going through the gates into American society. And then you have a border here on the bottom. It says the border, and there's some people climbing over the fence and entering in, and there's a sign by the border that says, to immigrants, God's law is not enforced here. Idolatry is allowed. And this meme, this drawing, represents the problem exactly. Do I say there's no issue with immigrants coming over here if they're evil, wicked people? I say that's a problem. Yes, that's a problem. But number one, emigration and immigration are not evil. So if I'm going to preemptively punish them, now I'm going against God's system, which would be foolish of me to think that I can bring blessing to our society by rejecting God's standard. So there's a problem. Whenever you see a problem in life, whether it's your personal life or in society, I agree there's a problem, but if in our solution to the problem, one of us says, well, what does God say? And the other one says, well, it doesn't matter what God says, we just have to solve the problem. The latter person is not going to make things better. And so those that are trying to solve the problem of evil people coming to America with more man-made laws are only making things worse. And they're failing to see what is causing the problem of immigration. On the one hand, immigration can be a wonderful, good thing. It's not, by definition, bad that immigrants are coming over. Now, in the current context, I'm happy to agree that this is not good that so many people are coming to America who hate God and hate righteousness. But the problem is we are producing far more of those people anyway. And what do we expect? If we produce a nation of idolaters and fornicators and statists, why are we surprised when God judges us by bringing in a bunch of idolaters and fornicators and statists or Muslims, whatever? Why are we surprised that God is judging us for our rebellion against his law by sending us more wicked people? If we had a society that embraced God's system, we would not be churning out millions of statists, idolaters, perverts, and freeloaders from the government school system, and we would not be creating innumerable laws that give loopholes for the immigrants. Where do you think all these loopholes come that allow these immigrants to stay in America, or force employers to teach them, or who force employers to allow them to use a language other than English? Where are all those loopholes coming from? They're coming from the legislation. So if we didn't have this system of man-made legislation, American society would not be attractive to evil people. We have made our society attractive to evil people, and then we lament because evil people are coming here, and we think we can stop them with more man-made laws. It's just as foolhardy as thinking we can stop drugs or guns from coming into the nation. It doesn't work. We can't stop people from coming into a nation. They're the most resourceful. Drugs and guns are inanimate objects, and yet they find a way to get into this nation because people are getting them in, and people who are desperate to get here will find a way in. Now, there's many ways to solve that, and none of them involve man-made law or border agents or fences. Get rid of the welfare state, get rid of the man-made legislative system, get rid of all these laws, embrace God's system of God's law and adjudication, and America becomes a very unattractive place for evil people and a very attractive place for righteous, hardworking people. That is what we should want. But here we have people that are just gung-ho about getting rid of all the immigrants, and they are ignoring the actual problem. And for the life of us, Luke and I cannot find anyone to debate this. Now, I will say we found a couple years ago Alan Miracle. Kudos to him for doing a debate with Luke on immigration. Unfortunately, for the sake of the debate, Alan really didn't disagree with us too much. He doesn't really seem to me at least, he doesn't seem to be the kind of guy who's like, hey, immigration is the issue and we got to deport everyone or everything's going down. I don't think that was Alan's position. So the debate maybe didn't have as much friction as it could have. So I think we're actually closer to Alan than we are to some of these Christian nationalists out there who are just gung-ho. The only solution we have is to deport all these people, and that's going to save our nation. And we would love for one of those people to debate us, to debate Luke or debate me. You pick, whichever one you want to debate, at Future of Christendom's October conference. But we can't find anyone willing to do it. They will light up the keyboards on Facebook or Twitter, but I've reached out to numerous people, and none of them, to a man so far, has said, yeah, I'm down. I can defend the position that we need to deport all these illegal immigrants because it's wrong for them to come into the nation without papers. We're still looking. We're still looking for someone willing to do that. And I think this meme, in a very concise way, shows us what the problem is. Twofold. The government school system, yes, but probably even more important, or at least just as important, is what that sign represents. God's law is not enforced in America, so idolatry is welcome here. What message does that send to the world, to evil people? Hey, we don't punish idolatry. We don't punish blasphemy. This is not a Christian nation. We don't care if you spurn and blaspheme Christ. Come on over. And on top of that, we'll give you a bunch of free stuff. And on top of that, you can, if you get enough influence and enough money, you can create a bunch of laws that benefit your people group, right? Like the Jews, right? I mean, look at how the Jews are benefiting from American legislation. So is it any wonder that Muslims would come over? Like we're shocked that a bunch of Muslims would come over here or to Deerfield, Michigan, and start to use the American system to their advantage. Why are we surprised by that? The solution is to reject man's system, take God's system. Now there's nothing for these parasites to latch onto. God's system is immune from corruption. The system. Now there can be evil men, but the system itself will not attract evil men like our system does, and the system itself will not be conducive to evil men harming others. It's a very high maintenance, high friction thing for evil people to prosper in God's system, especially to prosper as a magistrate. So anyway, if you know anyone who's willing to travel to Pennsylvania, and we could probably even pay for their travel and hotel if we can get someone who's willing to debate immigration or natural law versus theonomy this October, man, we're still waiting for someone who's really, rabid about this immigration thing to debate us. Again, we had one immigration debate, and it was a good debate, and I encourage you to watch it, Luke Saint versus Alan Miracle. But Alan Miracle, to his credit, he was pretty consistent, but he even said, we're not that far off from each other, but we needed a debate opponent, and he did a good job. But we're looking for someone who, this is their thing, that they're saying immigration, this is the problem. And there's plenty of them doing that. And when I reach out to them, they say, oh, no, I don't want to debate that. Or no, there's nothing left to say. So we need a keyboard warrior who's willing to go publicly before hundreds of people, as we do at these debates every year, and defend his position and take questions from the audience as well. So if you know anyone, let me know. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that helpful. Again, go to LancasterPatriot.com. Check out that article on these ridiculous the ridiculous definitions of anti-Jew stuff. I hope you found the Matt Walsh clip interesting. He's getting close, but he's not there yet. And this meme, I think, is pretty accurate in terms of what's going on in America. All right, if you want to support the show and get early access and also get Patreon exclusive content like our book club, I just did an episode on James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I found that very interesting, and I make some specific application in that book club episode to theonomy and civil society. I think there's some points that Clear makes that are very, very pertinent to theonomy. So you can get that at patreon.com/LancasterPatriot. If you sign up to be a patron, you'll get early access to all these regular episodes before the public does, and you will also get exclusive content like our book club episodes that I'm going to have a lot more of soon, but there's several already up there. Frankenstein, what else did we do? Book by Steve Turley, a book by Pascal Denault on covenant theology, and we just did James Clear, Atomic Habits. The Island of Dr. Moreau, I had an episode recorded. The video didn't work, so I'm going to re-record that. That'll be up soon as well as a book club. And then we got some other books coming up. Hopefully The Count of Monte Cristo, maybe Great Expectations, a couple fiction books, and others as well. So go to patreon.com/LancasterPatriot for more on that. Go to futureofchristendom.org to sign up for events and emails so you can stay abreast of what's going on with us. Be sure to check out Luke's podcast, Think and Reform, and Joel and Matt's podcast, the Offensive and Foolish podcast. And until next time, remember that Christ, not man, is king. So long.